Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ethics Experts. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. And if you are a returning subscriber, hey, how's it going? What's up, friend? You see what happens when you subscribe to the Ethics Experts? You get a bonus greeting on every episode. Absolute no-brainer to hit that subscribe button. I am here with the man, Ludovic Roptus. How you doing, bud?
Very good. And you, Nick?
Good, man. Really excited to get you on. So you are someone I've been following on LinkedIn for a while. You're a compliance thought leader. You're global. You're super passionate. Full of ideas, and really excited to get you on here to kind of pick your brain on your story, where this industry is going, what you see around the curve, and just to kind of hang out for a while. So welcome, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Nick.
Yeah. So let's. Where are you at right now?
I'm talking to you from the south of France.
Oh, beautiful.
Between Aix-en-Provence and Marseille.
Oh, amazing. See, we got an international podcast now. This is great.
Yes.
So let's just dive right in. What first set you on a path toward a career in compliance?
Yeah, it's a bit of, it wasn't planned at all. I graduated from an MBA in corporate finance, started my career in England and then in France. And I was working as a CFO. And then I entered this company where compliance was a very, very important topic because of the compliance breach that happened in the past. And it was so important that the CFO took it very, very personally and built a very strong compliance system.
Wow. What kind of a company was it?
It's Infineon Technologies. It's a semiconductor company.
Got it.
Based in Munich. Based in Munich. And listed at the DAX 30.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And as many companies, we had compliance breach in the past.
Yeah.
And the CFO, member of the board, took it very personally and decided to implement a strong compliance system and hire a team, a global team, and then a regional team. And because he was a CFO,
mm-hmm.
he said that head of finance from different countries should be compliance ambassador.
Interesting.
Okay, because the global compliance team was so small that they needed some help to support the program. And I was a head of finance in France. So that's how I started my journey in compliance.
So that's pretty interesting, right? It's pretty interesting for a CFO to kick this off. And I mean, I've had hundreds of these kinds of conversations. I've never heard of this term of a compliance ambassador at the CFO level. It usually feels like the compliance department is trying to convince the CFO that, hey, we need some more budget and we need to make these investments. What was that like, having that dictate from that executive level? How did you see these compliance ambassadors start to drive more compliance in their little corners of the world?
The thing is, in many, so we were a global organization, okay? And sometimes with very small offices. And in these offices, you could have some salespeople, maybe one HR representative, maybe one managing director, and always somebody taking care of finance. And we would call that CFO or
mm-hmm.
head of finance.
Mm-hmm.
And it was decided to ask the finance representative to help on compliance because having the managing directors was not a good idea. Because first, person might be too busy to do it, or it would be better to have some kind of a counter power of the managing director to help on compliance. And HR wasn't an option. And most of the time on those small legal entities, there's nobody working for legal. So the only, I would say, support function or the best choice would be the head of finance.
Awesome. Interesting. So this is put on you. You become a de facto compliance ambassador in your office. And then what?
Exact. And then so that was, of course, brand new for me. Even if topic like corruption, everybody knows about corruption. So I started to have this role and understanding what was asked by the global team, and what was asked to me. I can summarize it in pretty briefly, was to be the eyes and the ears of the global compliance team for my office in France.
So to be the eyes and ears for the global compliance team. So what did that force you to start to look at that you weren't looking at before? And how did you develop a good ear and develop a good eye for the types of things you were supposed to be tuned into?
When I was head of finance, I was very focused on accounting and financials and forecast. And with this compliance hat of compliance ambassador that I've been given, I had to broaden my skill set. First of all, I had to learn all the local rules or legal rules in terms of corruption, in terms of whistleblowing hotline, in terms of workplace misconduct. I had also to dive into the business model of the company, even though it was something I knew, but just having this compliance hat, I had to dive into topic that I didn't know before, or I knew them, but there wasn't my priority. Like,
right,
for instance, meeting with competitors, when you have the discussion with competitors, and which antitrust risk that can raise. So those type of topics that I was not paying too much attention for before were brought to my attention thanks to this role.
You know, what's interesting is, this is not the case all over the place. Absolutely not the case in your organization. But many times there's this sort of like sibling rivalry between compliance and finance, right? Compliance doesn't know how to talk to finance. They don't know how to persuade them to get what they need. Finance sometimes thinks compliance is a cost center and is something that, is just a drag on the business and so forth. But I think what you just underscored here is something pretty interesting, is that you becoming that compliance ambassador for your organization, given your background in accounting and finance and just, corporate finance, whatever, you really have an eye for this stuff already. Because as you come up through, accounting, for example, you're learning all of these accounting principles that apply across these different businesses and so forth. That principle-based approach can, translate into many different scenarios. And as you're building financial models and so forth, there's so many little details that you have to consider and assumptions and all that kind of stuff. It's like finance has a good mind for compliance as it is. And it's interesting to see this synergy created in somebody like yourself, who's, again, very, very passionate about this thing. But to see that this isn't oil and water, this is something that's very complementary. And it sounds like you took to it very quickly.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Yes, I took it very quickly. Because this question came up so much to me, because now I'm the one nominating compliance ambassador. So I'm the one talking to head of finance. You're gonna help me on compliance, and most of the time I've got those big eyes saying, "Why me?"
Right.
And the answer I give them is, the good thing with accounting and finance and controlling is any single decision which is being made in a company is at some point being translated into numbers.
Yeah, right.
Anything. So whether it's a fine, whether it's somebody being terminated and you need to pay a severance, or a vendor which is being selected, or an entertainment event being thrown, or somebody trying to bribe somebody else, there's an expense behind. So that's how I convinced. I said, yeah, you are head of finance. This will impact you in the beginning or at the end, but this will impact you for sure.
And what were those conversations like? You just mentioned that sometimes they have these wide eyes. How do you get them to shrink those eyes and get less anxious about whatever you're talking about?
So this first argument. The second one is I'm I'm a big fan of fraud prevention. Okay, so when I come and speak to head of finance and I told them, look, if you take this role seriously and you give the impression to your employees that you are looking at what they're doing,
Mm.
so this detection feeling will make people being very careful, okay, and will might end up with have less fraud and less and much more savings. Like I can give you some example. Um, for instance, an employee that wants to travel first class, but he or she is not allowed to. Okay, and he or she find a way to travel first class and pay a $4,000 ticket instead of a couple of hundred tickets. If this person knows that the head of finance is looking into that,
Mm-hmm.
then this person will be less likely to to commit a fraud. So that's another, I would say, argument that I would give to my finance colleague.
Yeah,
It's a good way to make savings.
yeah, it's creating a disincentive for fraud because you know somebody capable and smart and who's numbers minded is going to be, for lack of a better term, they're going to be policing that expense report that you're turning in. So you better not kind of color outside of the lines. So you kind of took to this like a duck to water. You found an interesting sort of complementarity between your finance background and the compliance background. As you were getting your feet on the ground, how did you start to look at the world and see opportunities for more impact within your organization?
So this happens naturally because I was offered to be this time head of compliance for a whole region, so the Americas region, which is USA, Mexico, and Brazil.
Oh, wow.
So, so I transitioned from a finance role to a compliance dedicated role,
Cool.
dealing with compliance and internal control mainly. So that happened just naturally.
Yeah. And so as you stepped into that role, at what point was it very clear to you that you were a quote unquote compliance professional or person?
Yeah.
When did that light bulb come on and say in your heart you said, I'm home. This is what I need to be doing?
Okay. I'm a people person, and what I really like in life is knowing why people are taking decisions. So it can be their upbringings, it can be their environment, it can be their work, their family, the situations. And I like that, and I like to understand, analyze why people are taking decisions. And compliance, it's a people job. You can have the best system, but at the end of the day, it's human beings taking decisions.
Right.
When I had that light bulb when I was invited to interview an employee during one of our work,
Mm-hmm.
and so we knew already what was the facts, but we wanted to understand why
Yeah.
this person did something wrong at this moment. And listening to that person, understanding his personal financial struggle, his life, um, how he sees his work, I just realized that that was for me because there's no bad or wrong person. It's just a situation.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. And so that was a moment where I understood, yeah, that's job is for me. Listening, understanding, and yeah, listening and understanding people.
So as you look back on your previous role, which again,
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of, which was all numbers essentially.
Yeah.
Do you, in retrospect, see that there was a missing piece to that job that wasn't giving you the fulfillment or that wasn't giving you an opportunity to release your gifts? And did you, so, and if so, also when you were back in that role, did you feel like there was a missing piece to it?
Yeah, definitely. Um, I really like my role in finance and legal and tax. I think it's when you take it seriously, there's a lot to do, and I really like it. But what I missed is first the innovation. I think in compliance, it's a pretty new topic, and there's a lot of innovation to be done still around data analytics, and we'll talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
around training, around investigation. There's so much that still needs to be done. So I missed this innovation part.
Right.
I I think I also missed the how to grab people attention,
Yeah.
and it's a job where you talk a lot to a lot of different persons, and the good thing, at least for me, is that you talk to so many departments, to so many people that are just doing things that are so different, especially in large organization.
Right.
Yeah, it's your day is never the same, and it's you always every day you're learning new processes, new people, new risk.
Right.
That's what I was missing before.
So I love talking to people like you that are passionate about this and that are excited about the role that ethics and compliance can have in an organization. Um, you bring a lot of energy to it, and I think a lot of people are, not all, of course, but a lot of people feel a little bit downtrodden in these positions because they're viewed as a cost center and they don't have the power within their organization that they'd like to really make the impact that they think the organization needs. But I love how you've kind of reframed that as you stepped into this new role, coming from a kind of finance, which was a little bit more, for lack of a better term, like a little bit more of an introverted role, a little bit more of a heads down, staring at a spreadsheet kind of role. Which again, there's interesting things in that, right? There's interesting aspects of how can I get this thing to balance. I have I kind of came out of accounting and finance as well, so a lot of
Yeah,
what you talk about really resonates with me because the people element to this game that we're in is super interesting, and it's a game of persuasion. And as you talked, again, to your point, as you talk to these different people throughout the organization, it's almost like you get to see a lot more of the dimensionality of the business. You can see things from different perspectives that sitting behind a spreadsheet and looking at the manifestation of that business on that two-dimensional screen you're looking at can never capture. Getting out there and talking to folks leads to, again, a lot of dynamics that can drive innovation because you see opportunities and you see how people are thinking and you see how people are actually processing the incentives that they're presented with within the corporate structure or within their corner of the world. So a lot of what you talked about really resonated with me, and I think you probably bring a really interesting mix of abilities to the role with this finance analytical background that, because you're a people person, can greatly complement the ultimate input, and magnify the impact that you're having in your company.
yeah, totally agree. And to make again a link between compliance and finance, I took my certified fraud examiner certification,
Oh, wow.
which is a pure, I would say, audit.
Yeah.
I would say a skill set or certification, and it's good because I had naturally the people aspect. I'm a people person, so everything that relates to workplace misconduct or
Yeah.
workplace issues, I can deal with that naturally. But I've got also this fraud and aspects, and to be honest, when you have an accounting or auditing background like you just understand the mechanics.
Right.
You understand just the mechanics and the impact on the financials and where people want to do. So it's I think to be honest, it's a good combination.
Yeah, I think it's a great combination. And, if you're a doctor, great. If you're a lawyer, great. If you're a doctor and a lawyer, that's a super powerful combination,
Yeah.
and you see this kind of synergy when people have these diverse backgrounds who come into this game. And, thank God that finally the archetype of what people are looking for seems to change, or seems to have changed over the years. Whereas before it was like, you just need to be a lawyer if you're going to be in compliance. Well, that's a great background for it, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think as organizations recognize that there's a lot of different backgrounds that can add a ton of value to the compliance, to the compliance department, it opens up a lot of opportunities for different people to come in and let their gifts be released.
Agree.
So what do you focus on as a leader in terms of developing people or being a carrier of culture within your organization?
Inside my team, for instance, or in
Well,
general?
I'd like to hear about both pieces, both in terms of your team, which are the folks that you can probably affect most readily and most quickly, but then also as you think about the broader organization and driving change across these group of people that are in different locations, in different countries and jurisdictions and so forth, what kind of connection points do you have between that, the leadership, manifestation in both of these realms?
Okay. Let's start by how do I connect with leadership? Okay.
Perfect.
Then
Yeah.
I'll give you my view about how to lead a team. One, if I can nail one little thing, not little actually, a big thing that needs to do as a compliance is understand the business.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's key. And when I hear either auditors or compliance that just uh, would lecture people without understanding the business, the value flow, who are the customers, who are the
Mm-hmm.
vendors, what are the pressure points, what is the strategy of the company.
Yeah.
If you do not understand that really really well, especially in large organization, I think top management will not listen to you.
Right. And why do you think that
They
is?
why? Because there's in large organization there's a when you are a manager you have a lot of things and topic and time
Mm-hmm.
to spare on tasks that are not your core business. Okay, if you are a head of sales, your job is to sell. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to deal with HR policies, to legal policies, to facility management policies, and at some point you just do it, you tick the box, and you just don't pay attention. So if a compliance professional do not understand the business and don't talk the same language to the head of sales, then the person will listen to you 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then will just do what you ask them to do, and then that's it. If you can engage, and the best is engage and find a common ground
Yeah.
where your objective as compliance is the same objective as the head of sales, then that's the best.
Totally.
Then your compliance program will be driven by the head of sales, and that's for me this is what I'm looking for. That's the best.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about crowdsourcing risk management, and we paint this picture often of compliance being the goalie on a football field.
Yeah,
And you can make it all the way to the World Cup. Do you like how I called it football instead of soccer? I did that for you, buddy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you can make it all the way to the end of the World Cup and make it to the finals, but if you let that last goal by, you're blamed and you're dragged in the streets and your name is dragged in the mud, irrespective of the fact that you blocked all those other shots that allowed the team to get to the finals. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So the best goalies are the ones who have the best defenders. That's my theory. And to your point, when you can start to crowdsource risk management, meaning you can let the crowd of people, the crowd of managers or other leaders in your organization pick up the banner that you're trying to carry and carry that forward themselves in their corner of the world or with the teams that they're over, then the odds of a goal getting, the odds of a goal being scored or something getting past the goalie is greatly diminished. But to your
yeah,
point, you have to stay coordinated with those defenders, and you have to, again, to your point, make sure that those defenders are aligned in terms of, hey, our job is to stop these goals. The interesting piece is that many people, again, not all, many people, or like the low end chief compliance or the low end compliance officers who walk around with a hammer and say, well, this is what you should do, and they're pointing their finger in the face of the salesperson. They don't get a lot of traction, and they don't get a lot of benefit from this smart person, presumably, who's in a position who could be an ally and could actually help make their lives easier. I love this approach that you're taking of finding common ground, speaking their language. And what we're talking about is not only in what we call an others focus, focusing on the other person instead of focusing on myself.
yeah,
We're talking not only about an others focus, but we're also talking about speaking their language, right? Like if you can't speak their language, you just end up losing a ton of credibility. And if you don't have any credibility and the person looking at you across the table thinks that you're an idiot, the odds of them doing something, in the discretionary realm, I'm saying, separate from the mandatory realm, the discretionary realm is where all the magic happens. The odds of you getting them to swim in that discretionary pool is basically zero if they think you're stupid or whatever, because people at the end of the day are going to respond to incentives. But if you can frame it in a way where it's saying, hey, what you want is what I want, and what I want is to help you do your job better and easier and let you run faster, well, that's a much different conversation to have.
Yeah, totally well said. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. When you can reach this point where you have a common objective, then it's a pleasure.
Why do you think that in and of itself is an innovation in compliance? Why do folks have such a hard time doing what seems to be so natural for you?
I think maybe from the history of compliance first, because I would say compliance was managed by legal or HR representative. And if I talk about my legal friends, what I think is legal is mostly in large corporation very reactive and protective of the company. Okay. Compliance 2.0, compliance 2.0 is not reactive, it's preventive.
Right.
Okay. So the history was, there is an issue, we need to react, we need to investigate, we need to sanction, we need to train. Okay. And so it was very defensive. Okay. Now I think, and I read a lot of books and listened to a lot of people about that, is to prevent and to avoid issues from happening. And to do that, the only way to do that is to first to have the buy-in of the top management. And again, to have the buy-in of the top management you need to have the compliance program being embedded into the corporate strategy. Okay.
Right.
And I can give you an example. If today we have customers that wants a product that respect ESG concerns or corruption concerns, and all the customers don't want to buy a product that are manufactured by child, for instance. So you need to be at the center of the conversation with the supply chain, with the vendors, with salespeople, saying, okay, here is what we do, how we're going to communicate about it, and then compliance become at the heart of the corporate strategy, not the last thing we think about when we talk about strategy.
Yeah, and so on that note, do you feel like the entrance of ESG into this conversation, I mean, this is now in the global conversation, this is an acronym everybody is talking about and everybody knows now. Do you think the entrance of that into the conversation makes it easier to translate the potential impact compliance can have on an organization to the top management who maybe historically has looked at compliance as this back office thing?
Yeah, definitely, because they see it as a marketing tool. They see it as a
what you want is what I want, to your point.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, that's a golden opportunity that we cannot miss.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. I know ESG has been out for a long time, and people have been talking about, stakeholder approach versus shareholder approach for many, many years. Whatever, it's here now, so it's being talked about now more. And I just think, in general, I think you can win any hand of poker with any hand, you can win any pot of poker with any hand you're given if you play it right. And this is a great hand that we've been given, because if we can play it right, it's very easy to translate the efforts that we're trying to do to release the magic of the workforce and to be that circulatory system of the organization and make sure that, hey, we're really living out the values that we espouse on our website and our marketing materials and so forth. But putting it in those marketing terms, it's just kind of interesting. putting it in those marketing terms from the perspective of those executives at the top who maybe haven't historically thought a lot about compliance is a very, very powerful move.
Yeah, no, it's a powerful, but Nick, marketing doesn't mean false. It needs
I get it.
we need to have a paper. We need to have
100%.
a real strong and meaning it. But yeah, I think it's a golden opportunity. And if we look at the last 5 years, we had the Me Too movement, okay, which has a link with compliance because it's a workplace misconduct. We have diversity and inclusion, and of course ESG. Also, all those topics, if you frame them right, you can again find a common ground, common objective with marketing, with communication, with sales, and of course with the CEO. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why it's been easy for you, and I'd love to kind of dive into that. And maybe easy's the wrong word, but you're somebody who's gained a lot of traction within your own organization to push these changes and push these innovations. What would you attribute it to? Would you attribute it to your ability to kind of have the yin and the yang, the numbers and the people? Is it your you can speak numbers, and so you can always tie that down to something objective that are the dollars and cents that the executive's thinking about? What do you think it is that has allowed you to kind of to have more dexterity with respect to driving change in the organization versus being crippled or not seeing the opportunity that some of these things, Me Too, inclusion, ESG, have presented in terms of magnifying the impact of compliance?
I think I understand one thing that people wants to hear about themselves, and so my approach was not to ask people to do things. My approach was to understand people and make them talk, and then when they talk, when they telling me what are their pressure points, what are their KPIs, or the difficulties they have in their work or their objectives, then by knowing their environment, I can always find one little topic or task which is linked to my compliance program. And this is how I get traction.
Yeah, again, it's so simple, but it's so powerful, right? You're speaking pain points, you're speaking their language, you've taken the time to understand where they're coming from and what their world actually looks like. So instead of doing a top-down dictate or a top-down mandate that says you must do this, you're really kind of going bottom-up and on a person-by-person basis, at least at some level, maybe it's even just the manager level. Understanding that, again, can allow you to hook what your agenda to a pain point they are feeling to drive an outcome that's going to be mutually beneficial and, hopefully beneficial broadly across the organization and, the community that you're in.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. Yeah.
And that just kind of comes naturally to you because you're a people person, and you started this conversation out by saying one of the things that interests you most is people, how they make decisions, how they respond to incentives, and what those incentives and decision-making patterns, or I guess how those things lead to the outcomes that may be in question. So it's kind of a natural thing for you.
Yeah, of this, and also the fact that I like to know how anything works. And I'm from a very complex supply chain, the semiconductor industry, where there's a lot of, it's very, very difficult to understand.
Yeah.
And so because I've got this natural curiosity, I would say, to understand, okay, so this department, what do they do? How does this connect to that? And so just to have this curiosity of understanding, I would say, the business, I think, was brought a lot of values to my compliance work.
Yeah, because I guess like if you're naturally curious, then when you're having that conversation with somebody and the questions you're asking, when you're having that conversation, the questions you're asking are authentic because you're authentically trying to understand this person. So again, versus just kind of going through a list of, hey, I'm going to ask you about how was your day? I'm going to ask you about, you know what I'm saying? You're having an actual conversation, you're building an actual connection with them, and it's fueled by that natural curiosity you have. As I was thinking about this, or as you were talking, I was thinking about this role of a compliance ambassador, and I understand in the context of your business how that was another hat that you had to put on as a finance person, but I don't know the extent to which the average compliance department is thinking about having this sort of ambassador function. That is, maybe it's a person who has a personality type that's, that's resonant with this type of work, but understanding and making those connections and driving that persuasion on a person-to-person level is really the way to start crowdsourcing risk management and getting up that curve in a parabolic way to magnify that impact. But it's such a powerful thing. And, again, at the end of the day, we are not a bunch of people staring at screens, typing words on a page. We're human beings making decisions, and we're working with other human beings and relying on this vast, complex network that exists in every organization to get that organization's mission done. So pulling it from the rules and the regulations down to the individual level just allows for so much. And I think we could probably talk about that, forever. But let me ask you this. How is the compliance team that you've been a part of uniquely positioned, you think, to drive empathy and a strong culture throughout the organization? A lot of time is spent talking about the regulations and the rules and so forth, but I think actualizing the workforce, and when compliance can expand their mandate to releasing the power in the workforce or releasing the magic in the workforce, that can drive a lot of, value within the organization. So how do you think about that kind of impact on, driving a strong culture? And how do you think we can help expand the scope of compliance more quickly to encapsulate this piece of the puzzle?
That's a difficult question. There's a lot to say. So do you want to talk about empathy?
Yeah, let's start there. I think that's kind of the life language that we all speak,
Yeah. If you want to talk about empathy, so don't talk about rules or do not pronounce the word must or must not. That's one of my friend and my former GC was always telling me, do not lecture people.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is how I see my job. I'm not here to tell people what to do and what not to do. And I've never done it, and I will not do it in the future. My role is to create awareness and saying, did you think about that? Or did you think about that? Or do you know that there is this risk? And when you come up with an attitude which is, look, Nick, I'm going to protect you. Because if you do that, you might be in trouble.
Right.
Did you think about that? If you come up with this attitude of protecting people and the company, then you drive empathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, it's so simple, but people divorce this empathy from their day-to-day lives, especially within businesses oftentimes, and especially when they're dealing with departments that they don't know, or people that's just, it's just, the person is not a person, it's just an email address, or it's just a name on a line on a spreadsheet or something. You know what I'm saying? There's a person behind that name who has their own difficulties in their own life and their own challenges and their own goals and whatever, right? And connecting with that is way more powerful than, to your point, just lecturing at somebody and speaking at them instead of speaking with them.
Yeah, exactly. And I made, I put a mantra on my program. I called it a speaker program, and I can give you some tips that I was always,
Yes.
I was always doing. Like any single question on any single topic, even if it was outside my scope, I would take the time to answer fast within 24 hours and understand the background. And it was, I would pick up the phone and really talk to the person, because for me, any single conversation, any single contact with compliance was just, for me, an opportunity to know better the business.
Yeah.
To learn to learn a new risk or a new topic. So for me, that was something extremely, extremely important.
Yeah, and again, that's fueled by your natural curiosity and your desire to connect with people and to understand, again, different avenues and different, places that you can strategically make things different.
Yes, and usually when I read papers or articles, the way compliance is presented is, compliance will be the one drafting the code of conduct, and then communicating the code of conduct to the whole organization and making sure that the code of conduct is known, and which is something which is very important.
Yeah.
But for me, the next level of compliance is not compliance addressing, lecturing, giving lessons. It's the other way around. It's people talking to compliance and say, "Oh, what about that?" or "What about that?" And then compliance will learn from people. And this is especially true with COVID, where people are working from home, where it's impossible for me in front of my laptop to know what's happening
Yeah,
in
right.
Mexico.
Yeah, good
I
point.
cannot, it's impossible.
Right.
So I need people to come and talk to me and tell me what's happening on the ground, and raise my awareness. And based on that, I can derive controls, trainings, rules to prevent. But this is I reverse the flow.
Yeah,
People will
right.
talk to me, and I will act on based on what people are telling me.
So I love that reframe because you hear a lot of people complain about how this work from home environment is so hard to navigate. It sounds like you've kind of taken advantage of that and used it as opportunities to make connections with people in Mexico or wherever else, to get those additional insights, not only on a sort of a macro basis, but also on a micro basis in terms of what they're dealing with in this new normal. That's really great.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can give you one thing. One activity we did, and I was very happy because the result was completely unexpected. We started a program. We looked at the numbers. I'm a big fan of numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and we saw that most of our question and complaints were related to workplace misconduct,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a feeling of being bullied
Mm-hmm.
or discrimination or harassment. And so based on that, we conducted a risk assessment, and we came up with a training, a virtual training on Zoom, where instead of me or somebody from HR, from legal, uh, presenting a PowerPoint and rules and laws and sanction and risk, what we did is we showed a video of a case, of a real case. Okay, it was related to diversity and inclusion or harassment, and we asked people to to tell us what is the best way to avoid that in the company,
Ah,
or what would they do. Okay, and they came up with the best answer that I would have never thought about. So for me, that was also an eye opener.
yeah. I mean, that does a couple of things, right? That is, uh, you're not giving people the answer. You're letting them go through it and think about it themselves, and you're getting some of that benefit of the magic of the crowd, right?
Yeah,
Crowdsourcing an idea. It's just a way to get people to engage and get some benefit of the diversity that's built into the business. I mean, there's diversity on the fact that there's just different people, let alone the different backgrounds, different races, whatever. So that's phenomenal. That's a again, I always talk about this when I talk to like a compliance innovator because they present these ideas like this that are super interesting, super effective, and yet they always seem to be so simple. We're talking about,
yeah,
hey, this is something that happened. What would you do? And then you're crowdsourcing all this stuff, and now someone has put themselves in the picture and thought through it on a deeper level versus just sort of disengaged, watching a screen, clicking through, whatever.
yeah, yeah. The only difficulty I had is something also. It wasn't scalable, so it was very good, and we had good feedback. But the next step is to find to engage people, but finding a way to do it on a more scalable basis. But that's
Yeah. How let's talk about that for a minute because that's an interesting problem. Like how have you thought about increasing the scalability or how have you thought about capturing that sort of crowdsourcing thing or that sort of essentially a Socratic method of conveying a compliance topic on a more broader
yeah.
basis?
I think the easiest way to do it to get information from a workforce which is spread over all over the world is survey.
Ah,
Yeah, that's the best, or compliance survey. And if I quote a good friend that I really admire, Eugene Soltes, even if you send a survey and you ask those three questions, have you not did you see any compliance issue in the last quarter, in the last 12 months? Did you report it? And if not, why didn't you report it? Just those kind of small surveys. I think this is the best, yeah, the most efficient tool
yeah,
to scale.
yeah. Do you guys do those kinds of things, or how have you seen them work, and how have you seen them fall flat?
We so we didn't do it consistently. That's one of my regrets. I think
Yeah.
this can be powerful if well done. What I see in terms of employee survey, I think the way it could be better is do it often. Okay, if you do it every 2 years or 3 years, it's not going to work because it's just one point. So you need to do it maybe every quarter, like financial statements.
Great
Okay,
point.
yeah, it needs to be short. It needs to be um, analyzed on a location basis or country basis or department basis. And it can be a rotating survey. Maybe one quarter you're going to survey, I don't know, New York, and the second quarter you're going to survey Seattle, and then you're going to survey Mexico. But I think this can bring a lot of values. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea. Keeping it short and getting enough data points so that you can actually get a trend line that is not just wrought with, errors. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or false positives, false negatives, whatever. Because, again, the workforce itself is changing all the time, and the respondents are changing, and the perceptions are changing, and the initiatives are changing. There's all this change going on in the organization. And that's why, to go back to your financial statement analogy, that's why you need both a balance sheet and that's why you need a balance sheet and a P&L, so you can see the snapshots, but you can also see the flows and how are things changing from time to time. You need those two dimensions to get a clearer picture of the financial health of the organization, right? The same way that having these repeated data points allows you to start to chart lines and understand and cut those in different dimensions to see, do I have a risk hotspot over here, or is this wheel squeaking that needs a little bit of oil, or we need some more training, or we need some more controls in place, or whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, and today, from what I know, from what I read, I think compliance is far from that.
I agree with you. Yeah.
By lack of budget, first, by lack of budget and understanding, and I think we are still, if you compare compliance, how we use data compared to marketing,
Right.
or post finance, we are just so far.
But again, that creates a massive opportunity. If we're not using data right, or if we're not using data to the extent that some of these other departments in our organizations are using it, well, that's all upside. That's all, potential benefits that we're just not reaping yet. You know what I'm saying? So let's talk a little bit about that, because you talked about the budget piece, and they don't have the budget and whatever. What advice would you give somebody who's maybe a little bit different than you? Maybe they don't have that finance background. Maybe they're not as much of an extrovert or as much of a people person. What advice would you give them, though, to help get them that budget they need from the person that controls the purse strings, whether that's the CFO or ultimately the CEO? What advice would you give them to influence those people to get the budget they need to prove themselves?
I think what worked with me is to in any organization, compliance teams are very small compared to other teams. Very small. Okay, so you need to find partners, either at HR or legal or communication, and then once you find a partner, maybe you can kind of carpool, if I can say.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I can give you an example. We recently we used a tool that was for sure maybe too expensive for the sole compliance department, but there was another department using this tool for data privacy. So we
Got
said,
it.
oh, by the way, could we use your tool, and maybe we would share the cost, and then that's it. So you need to find partners. I can give you another example. We shot a video of top executives to serve as a tone from the top, as an introduction of one of our training. Okay. I
Great.
didn't have budget to have professional editor and videographer, so but communication had. I said, yeah, would you would you lend me some of your budget to do that? And so they found a win because it's internal communication.
Right,
Okay.
right.
It's top executives talking to employees, so that's their work. And I found a win also with my program on having a tone from the top. So you need to find allies and partners,
Right.
and to do that you need to understand what they are doing and yeah
Y- I mean, you have to
and
have
smart people.
conversations with these people. You have to reach out to them, first of all,
Yeah,
but you have to sort of correspondingly understand that these opportunities are there throughout the entire organization. There
yeah,
are apples on the orchard room floor or on the orchard floor that you can just pick up. These are ripe apples. These are not rotted out. They're right there for you. You talk about low hanging fruit. These are even lower than the low hanging fruit. But it just takes building a relationship. And building a relationship does not mean courting. It doesn't mean you have to date somebody for 9 months to get a favor. It just means
yeah,
a couple of conversations to understand what's going on in their world, to find that overlap between their purpose and your purpose, or their agenda and your agenda, to link arms and get that cross pollination in place. I mean, that's a total win-win. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
I've seen a lot of people, innovate in this department, and particularly around like, this is not 1990 anymore, where to get a video shot, you need to bring in a film crew and do all that stuff. I've seen people even just use their cell phones, which have really nice cameras on them now. They're way better than, what you'd have to spend thousands of dollars on for a standalone camera, 5 or 7 years ago. But just having something tangible, something new, something innovative that can, again, magnify that message. If you can get somebody from the top to speak that, or again, utilize some of these other resources. But it all starts with people. It all starts with conversations, and it all starts with those empathy-based relationships, essentially.
Yeah.
So let's go. I always love to ask these two questions. So I'd love for you to first tell me, looking into your crystal ball, we're 10 years in the future. It's 2031. How has compliance changed? How has its role and its reputation in our organizations changed? That's the first question. And then the second question is, let's hop in the Wayback Machine and go back and find the young you. What piece of advice would you give him? So first forward looking, and then we're going to go back in time.
So forward looking, so how would compliance would be in 2031? As we I really believe in the term co-build. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like, do you have in France we have a political party called the Green, which is ecology. Okay.
Yeah.
This shouldn't be a party. This should be a
It should be
matter
everybody.
for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So compliance will be the same.
Got it.
So compliance will be the expert, but every single employee would have their integrity, their would bring to the table. Okay, so who would be the one helping and driving and no supporting?
Yeah.
But people would come and say, what about equal pay between women and men? And they would propose something and would help. So there would be maybe a department,
Mm-hmm.
but the drive would come from the employees themselves.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, and I mean, what we're talking about is ethics. We're talking about an ethical workplace. Who doesn't want an ethical workplace? You know, we're not trying to teach fish to fly. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
We're trying to teach fish to swim. They want to swim, and so empowering them and helping them to understand that the ethical work, ethics should be easy. Us having an ethical workplace should be easy, and this is what you actually want. It's just not that difficult. You know, if you can give people the track to run on, they're going to run a lot faster, to your point, than you think. So I love that. I love that picture, and that's kind of my vision as well.
And the second thing that we touch a bit is harnessing the data and using the data to prevent wrongdoing. And there's some work which is being done. And now I can give you some examples of activities that are being done. Like, for instance, travel and expenses. Okay. Today we have all the tools to drill down all the transactions,
Right.
whether it's a flight ticket, taxi fares, hotel rooms. Okay, and you could, for instance, design a profile of how much this type of function should spend during 1 year. Okay, and instead of, as a compliance, waiting for somebody not respecting the travel policy, you would have a dashboard and saying, oh, Mr. or Mrs. Y, she's way out of the profile we designed based on a functional. Mr. X, this person is not, should travel much more and have a higher budget. Something is happening. So
Right.
like this, instead of coming up with a one-size-fits-all training or policy, we would use the data and identify red flags to see if there is something wrong or not. That's
I love
how
that. Yeah.
The future of
You
compliance.
know, it's when you think back to the compliance 1.0 framework, it's kind of equivalent, like you said, it's very reactionary, right?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily fixing a systemic problem. It is just reacting to a problem. It's trying to put out a fire. And there I don't know if you've read about these cases, but when people were really overweight in the past, they would go and get like that stomach stapling surgery. Well, many of those people would end up reverting to being very overweight after that surgery because the systemic problem of their diet and their lifestyle and their just general like healthiness was never fixed. So that surgery ended up not really doing anything. I think what you're talking about is let's use this data to change our lifestyle to one that is really healthy, so we never have to get to the point where we have to get our stomach stapled. I love that vision.
Yeah. So that's what I would like to see in the future. But I think it's coming.
I do. I think it's coming too. We're getting those tools. To your point, we have the data there. Folks right now are swimming in these data lakes. We need to sort of be able to, find the story in this data and find the story, and turn this data into actual information that we can act on versus just like spinning through spreadsheets and, having nothing, no output that is any, that has any real meaning.
I agree.
All right, so let's go back in time now. Let's find the young version of you. What
but
advice
I think
would you give?
I did what I had to do. So, but an advice that I could give to my sons is to and I really believe in it. Every single piece of job, every activity you do is very, very interesting. It's all about the mindset you have. It's all about that. And let me give you an example. During 4 years, the only thing I did was accounting and tax. Okay. Now, Nick, how many people do you know that find accounting and tax interesting?
Not many.
Not many. Okay. I found it very interesting because people are just looking at numbers and spreadsheet or form to fill. But if you change your mindset and say, okay, there is this tax. Why a bunch of people worked many hours to have this tax being structured this way and the company being taxed this way. Okay, if you think about history, if you think about how to, and people are doing that, how to optimize or how to make it, how to do it quicker, or how the link between this number and this number, then what my point is broadening the skills and taking every single activity not as a boring activity, but as something which is just bigger than that. Okay. When you do that, you are just building dots and you are just accumulating knowledge.
Right.
But in the future, you're gonna see that you will find a connection. You will find a connection, and that's what I think is very interesting. And I can give you another example. One day I've been invited to work on counterfeit product. Okay. And I didn't know anything about the product first and about counterfeiting. But I was the only person available. So first of all, I studied it. I spent a week to study about counterfeit semiconductors, and I found it super interesting, very interesting. And then this work was the reason why I've been picked as head of compliance, because
interesting.
I was known and accepted this role. So I think every single piece of work needs to be, you need to take it, and then you'll find connection, and that's my advice.
That's a great mindset. I mean, there's truly opportunity in everything. And as you build this sort of lattice in your mind of all these different areas that you've learned about, these connections just naturally begin to form, and you can bring a really, a really nuanced solution that, otherwise you would probably miss out on. Exactly. I didn't even know about counterfeit semiconductors. That's a whole thing, huh? It's a whole industry.
Yeah, but it's counterfeit for everything, for perfume.
I guess you're right.
For everything, and
that's a counterfeit fire behind me.
Exactly.
That's crazy. I'd love to learn some more about that. Well, listen, man, I love your work. I love your heart and your passion. I've learned a lot in this conversation. This is really a lot of fun. Tell us where people can find you. Where can they reach out to you and learn more about you?
LinkedIn is the best. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us, man. This was a blast.
Thank you very much, Nick.
All right. Until next time.